I stood outside my own pool house, gripping a rusted iron spade, watching my wife of 10 years sweating in the arms of the man set to marry my daughter in 3 days. I was ready to smash through that glass and paint the walls with them, but a hand grabbed my wrist from the dark. It was my daughter. She wasn't crying. She looked like she was inspecting a cracked beam. "Put the shovel down," she whispered. "We don't get mad. We get everything. If you want to see how a titanium spine handles a knife in the back, subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments where you are watching from, because I didn't just catch them cheating, I caught them digging their own graves. Let me take you back to the moment the foundation started to crumble. My name is Robert Bob Sterling. I am 72 years old, and if you cut me open, I don't bleed red. I bleed wet concrete and rust. I spent 50 years turning the dust of New York City into steel canyons. I took vacant lots where the wind howled through trash and turned them into empires of glass and chrome. I know how things stand up. I know about load-bearing walls, tensile strength, and the precise moment a beam will buckle under too much weight. I thought I understood structure. I thought I could spot a fracture a mile away. In the real estate business, the sharks are easy to spot. They circle you with contracts and lawyers, their teeth bared in the open water. I respected them. I understood them. I was wrong. I was a fool looking at the horizon while the foundation was rotting beneath my feet. The most venomous sharks weren't swimming in the ocean. They were sleeping under my own roof, here in the Hamptons, wrapped in 800 thread count Egyptian cotton. And I wasn't just swimming with them. I was the one feeding them. It was 3 days before the wedding. The house was buried in the heavy, suffocating silence of 3 a.m. It wasn't a peaceful quiet. It was the heavy stillness of a mausoleum. I woke up gasping. It started in the chest, a heavy, crushing weight, as if one of my steel I-beams had fallen directly onto my sternum. Thump, 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 pause. My heart, a failing pump in a dying machine. Atrial fibrillation. It felt like a bird was trapped inside my rib cage, battering its wings against the bone, desperate to get out. My throat was sandpaper dry. I needed the rhythm to stabilize. I needed the chemistry. Digoxin. It was my lifeline, my anchor. My wife, Elena, was supposed to refill it yesterday. Elena, who organized her closet by color gradients. Elena, who noticed a smudge on a wine glass from across a ballroom. My hand trembled as I reached for the nightstand. The darkness of the room was absolute, save for the sliver of moonlight cutting through the curtains. My fingers brushed the cold amber glass of the prescription bottle. It felt wrong instantly. It lacked mass. I picked it up. It was light, feather light. I shook it, praying for the rattle of pills against plastic. Silence. A cold sweat broke across my forehead, distinct from the heart palpitations. Strange. Elena never forgets. She operates with the precision of a surgeon's blade. If the bottle was empty, it wasn't an accident. It was a choice. I sat up, fighting the vertigo. The room spun like a child's top, losing momentum. I needed water. I needed air. I needed to understand why my safety net was gone. I forced myself up. My legs felt hollow, my knees grinding. I walked out of the master bedroom and into the hallway. This house, I paid $12 million for it, but it never paid me back in warmth. It was a museum of cold marble, long stretching shadows, and the smell of furniture polish and old money. Every step echoed. Click, click. It didn't feel like a home. It felt like a cage designed by someone who hated comfort. I traced my hand along the wall for support. The plaster was cool to the touch, unyielding. I made my way toward the kitchen, my breath coming in shallow hitches. I was focused on the sink, on the tap, on the promise of water. But then, a sound drifted through the open patio doors that led to the garden. It stopped me dead. It was a rhythmic, guttural noise, a laugh, but not a polite, dinner-party chuckle. This was a wet, heavy, mocking laugh. It drifted in from the direction of the pool house. I froze, leaning heavily against the doorframe. My heart hammered a frantic, irregular rhythm against my ribs. Thump, thump, thump. It was a man's laugh. Low, arrogant. It wasn't the gardener. Old Thomas went home at 5. It wasn't security. I knew that timbre. I knew that pitch. No, I thought, the denial rising like bile. It can't be. I walked out into the chill of the night air. The stone path bit into the soles of my bare feet, grounding me. The smell of chlorine and night-blooming jasmine was thick in the air. I approached the pool house. It was a structure of glass and teak, glowing softly with dimmed orange lights like a lantern in the dark. I moved silently, a ghost in my own backyard. I wasn't the titan of industry now. I was an old man in pajamas, terrified of what lay behind the glass. I reached the sliding glass door. It was cracked open an inch. Through the sliver, I saw them. My heart didn't just skip a beat. It felt like the structural integrity of my entire life failed in a single second. There, on the custom Italian leather sofa I had imported last year, was Marcus, my future son-in-law, the man supposed to marry my only child, Jessica, in 72 hours. He was shirtless, sweat gleaming on his chest, and underneath him, tangled in the sheets and limbs, was Elena, my wife of 10 years. They didn't look like two people caught in a momentary lapse of judgment. They looked comfortable, practiced, like they had done this 1,000 times in 1,000 different rooms while I signed checks in the study. "That was good," Marcus said, his voice thick with satisfaction. He hit over and popped the cork on a bottle of my vintage Bollinger. He didn't bother with a glass. He swigged it straight from the bottle, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. "You better be careful," Elena purred. She sat up, adjusting her silk robe, the one I bought her in Paris. Her voice wasn't the soft, solicitous tone she used with me. It was sharp, hungry. "If the old man wakes up," Marcus laughed again, that same sound I heard from the kitchen. "Let him wake up. What is he going to do? He can barely walk to the bathroom without getting winded." He took another long pull of the champagne. "Besides, you said he took the medicine. He should be out for the count." I stood in the shadows, my hands clenching into fists. The knuckles turned white. The rage hit me first, hot and blinding, followed immediately by the shame. I wanted to strangle him. I wanted to wrap my hands around his throat and squeeze until the arrogance drained out of his eyes. "I gave him the special dose," Elena replied. She stood up and walked to the mirror, fixing her hair. Her demeanor was terrifyingly calm. Double-strength sedatives. No heart medication, no digoxin. He will be out cold until noon. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. It started at the base of my spine and froze my blood. She wasn't just forgetting my pills. She wasn't just careless. She was killing me. She was structurally engineering my death. "Just 3 more days, baby," Elena whispered, turning back to Marcus. "Just hold on. Once that brat Jessica signs the marriage certificate, the Sterling Trust is unlocked. $100 million. And I get control," she added, her eyes gleaming with greed. "And don't forget my share." Marcus smirked, leaning back, looking like a king on a stolen throne. "Then what happens to Bob?" Marcus asked, almost casually, as if asking about the weather. Elena shrugged. The gesture was so dismissive it hurt more than a slap. "His heart is a ticking time bomb. With the stress of the wedding, the heat, the lack of medication. Maybe he has a stroke at the reception. Too much excitement for a man his age. Enzi is gone. I have power of attorney," she finished. "We get the money, we declare Jessica mentally unfit to run the company, and we meet in the French Riviera," Marcus said, raising the bottle in a toast to their crime. I staggered back from the door. The reality of it crashed down on me. They weren't just cheating. This was a demolition. They were going to kill me. They were going to steal my life's work, 50 years of sweat and grit. And worst of all, they were going to destroy my daughter. Jessica, my little girl. My foot bumped against something metal leaning against the pool house wall. A heavy iron spade. The gardener had left it out. I grabbed the handle. The metal was cold, rusted, and heavy. It felt real. It felt like the tools I used to wield when I was 20, building foundations in the mud of Brooklyn. I was 72 and my heart was failing. My breath was short, but as I gripped that iron, I felt a surge of the old strength, the strength of the streets. I raised the spade high. I was ready to shatter the glass. I was ready to end them right there in a spray of blood and champagne. My muscles were coiled, the iron spade raised above my shoulder like an executioner's axe. The adrenaline was masking the pain in my chest, replacing the arrhythmia with a singular, murderous drumbeat. Kill, kill, kill. I took a step forward. The glass was inches away. Suddenly, a cold, firm hand clamped over my mouth. Another hand gripped my wrist, halting the swing of the spade. "Dad, stop." The whisper was barely babily, a breath against my ear. I froze, my body rigid. Panic flared. Had the security guards caught me? Was I about to be tackled on my own lawn? I spun around, ready to swing the spade at this new threat. It wasn't a guard, it was Jessica. My daughter stood there in the darkness, dressed in black, running clothes that blended into the hedges. Her face was pale, illuminated only by the faint orange glow spilling from the pool house. Her eyes, usually so full of warmth, were dry and hard as flint. She hicked at the spade in my hand, then at the glass door where the monsters were laughing. She didn't look surprised. "Put the shovel down," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly but commanding. "If you go in there, you go to jail. And they win." I looked at her, my chest heaving. "They are—" I choked on the words. "I know," she said. She gripped my arm, her fingers digging into my bicep. "Come with me." "In now!" We retreated not to the house, but to the basement entrance around the side. We descended the concrete steps, into the wine cellar. As a heavy oak door thudded shut, sealing us as the silence was absolute, the air down here was climate-controlled, kept at a constant 55 degrees to preserve the vintage Bordeaux and Burgundy. It smelled of old cork, dust, and money. It was soundproof, safe. I collapsed into a leather wingback chair I kept down there for tastings. My legs, which had been powered by rage moments ago, turned to jelly. I gasped for air, clutching my chest. The elephant was back, sitting on my sternum. "They are planning to kill me, Jessica." I wheezed, the words scraping my throat. "Elena, Marcus, they're waiting for me to die." Jessica walked to the wet bar. Her movements were precise, devoid of the frantic energy that consumed me. She poured a generous measure of brandy into a snifter and handed it to me. "Drink," she ordered. I took a sip. The burn of the alcohol grounded me. "I know, Dad," she said, leaning against the racks of wine bottles worth more than most people's cars. "I found out 3 months ago." I stared at her, the glass shaking in my hand. 3 months? You knew? You let this happen?" "I suspected," she corrected. She reached behind a stack of wooden crates and pulled out a thick manila envelope. She tossed it onto the tasting table. It landed with a heavy slap. "I hired a private investigator the moment Marcus started asking about the trust structures," she said. Her voice was flat, detached. It was a tone I recognized. It was the tone I used in boardrooms when I was about to hostilely acquire a competitor. She opened the file. Photographs spilled out. Grainy telephoto shots of Marcus in Miami. Marcus in a casino. Marcus meeting with people who looked like they broke legs for a living. "His name isn't Marcus," Jessica said, pointing to a mugshot stapled to a dossier. "His name is Ryan Cole. He's not a personal trainer or a venture capitalist. He's a high-end con man from South Beach. Fraud, extortion, grand larceny. Elena hired him 2 years ago," Jessica continued. "She found him, she groomed him, she brought him to the charity gala where we met. It was all scripted, Dad. Every date, every smile." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small plastic vial. "And the medicine?" she asked. "I switched her pills last week." I stared at the vial. "What? The bottle by your bed?" "It wasn't Donidoxin," she said grimly. "Elena has been filling it with a compound of high-grade sedatives and blood thickeners. She's trying to induce a stroke, or a massive cardiac event. She wants it to look natural." My stomach churned. The nausea was overwhelming. My wife, the woman I woke up next to, the woman who rubbed my back when it ached, had been methodically poisoning me with her morning kiss. "So we call the police," I said, struggling to stand. "We have the evidence." "We call the chief. I know him. We have them arrested tonight." "No," Jessica snapped. The sharpness of her voice stopped me. "Why the hell not?" I shouted, my voice cracking. "They're murdering me." "Because if we call them now, it's just attempted assault or fraud," Jessica said, her eyes blazing. Elena walks away. She triggers the no-fault clause in the prenup. She paced the small room. I had the lawyers look at it. The prenup gives her $2 million for every year of marriage. That's $20 million, Dad. Plus the Hamptons house. She slammed her hand on the table. She walks away rich. She walks away laughing. She goes to Europe with Arcus and spends your money while you recover in a hospital bed. She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw the sterling steel in her eyes. She wasn't just my daughter, she was my legacy. I don't want them to walk away, she hissed. I want them to leave in handcuffs. I want them buried. She laid out the plan. It was intricate. It was dangerous. It relied on variables we couldn't fully control. We have to let them think they've won, she said. We have to play out the string until the wedding, until the signatures are on the paper. You want me to pretend I'm dying? I asked. I need you to play the part of the senile, fading old man, she said. You have to let them humiliate you. You have to let them feed you the poison, which I will swap out. You have to let them believe the clock has run out. Can you do it? She asked, her voice softening. It will be the hardest thing you've ever done. You have to look a man in the eye who is sleeping with your wife and shake his hand. I looked at my shaking hands. They were spotted with age, scarred from years of construction sites. I looked at Jessica. She wasn't a little girl playing dress-up anymore. She was a general commanding an army of 2. I took a deep breath. The digoxin I had actually taken thanks to Jessica's swap was finally kicking in. My heart was slowing. For you, I said, steadying my voice, I can do anything. I'll build a skyscraper out of toothpicks if you ask me to. The sun rose on the day before the wedding. The light filtering into the breakfast nook was cruel, highlighting every dust note, every lie. I sat at the head of the table. I had spent an hour in the mirror practicing. I let my jaw go slack. I let my hands tremble visibly. I allowed a small line of saliva to pool at the corner of my lip. I made myself look small. Elena walked in. She looked radiant, fresh, innocent. She smelled of lavender and deception. Good morning, darling, she cooed, kissing the top of my head. Her lips felt like ice. She placed a single blue pill on a small china plate in front of me. New prescription, she lied effortlessly. Dr. Thorne sent it over this morning. He said your levels were fluctuating. 1 lie down, 1,000 to go. I looked at the pill. It was the bullet she was firing at my heart. Thank you, my love, I mumbled, my speech slurred. I picked up the pill with shaky fingers. I brought it to my mouth, and in a movement I used to use to check load weights without anyone noticing, I palmed the pill and pretended to swallow. I chased it with orange juice, hiding the pill in the folds of my napkin. Marcus walked in a moment later. He was wearing my silk robe, the maroon one I wore on Christmas mornings. He was eating a piece of my toast. You look tired, Bob, he said, chewing with his mouth open. Rough night? Maybe you should retire to a home soon. Get professional care. The rage flared in my gut, hot and molten. I wanted to stand up, flip the table, and smash his face in. But I remembered Jessica's eyes, in the wine cellar. I slumped further into my chair. Maybe, I mumbled, staring at my oatmeal. Maybe I am tired. So tired. Elena patted my hand. Her skin felt synthetic. Don't worry, Bob, she said, exchanging a glance with Marcus. We'll take care of you. We'll take care of everything. The doorbell rang at noon. I'll get it, Elena said too quickly. She returned with a man I had trusted for 5 years. Dr. Aristhorne. He was tall, thin, with a nose as sharp as a scalpel, and eyes that never stayed still. He carried a leather medical bag that looked more like a prop than a tool. Bob, Dr. Thorne said, his voice dripping with faux concern. Elena called me. She's worried about your color. He wrapped the blood pressure cuff around my arm. He pumped it tight, too tight. He placed the stethoscope on my arm, but he wasn't news flatting it. He was looking at Elena. Blood pressure is critical, Thorne lied to her, loudly enough for me to hear. AT over 110. His heart is struggling to maintain rhythm. He leaned in close to me. Cognitive function is failing, he noted to the room. He's unresponsive to basic stimuli. They bought him. Everyone has a price. And Thorne's was evidently low. Thorne opened his bag and pulled out a stack of documents. I have prepared the medical competency forms, Elena, just in case, he said smoothly. If he can't make decisions during the wedding or the transfer, you'll need these. He handed them to her. Elena took them, her fingers grazing his. She hid a smile behind her hand. Thorne leaned in to whisper to her, thinking I was deaf or too far gone to understand. Keep upping the dose, he hissed. His system is crashing. He won't last the week. Sunday at the latest. I stared blankly at the wall, drooling slightly, while inside, my mind was sharpening like a blade on a whetstone. Sunday, you say? I'll be sure to mark my calendar. That afternoon, the house felt heavier, as if the air pressure had dropped before a storm. I navigated the corridors with my practiced shuffle, the cane I didn't really need tapping a hollow rhythm against the floorboards. Tap, drag, tap, drag. I made my way to the library. This room was my cathedral. It was where I had planned the acquisitions of 3 distinct skylines. It smelled of tobacco leaf, mahogany, and the dust of first editions. It was the one place Elena rarely entered. She said it smelled like old men and boredom. I pushed the heavy oak doors open. Jessica was there, standing by the fireplace, her arms crossed so tight it looked like she was holding herself together with physical force. But she wasn't alone, sitting in my leather wingback chair. My chair, the one molded to my spine, was a man I didn't know. He wore a trench coat that had seen better decades, and his shoes were scuffed. He looked like a stain on the Persian rug. Dad, Jessica said, stepping forward. This is Sully. The man stood up. He wasn't tall, but he was dense, compacted like a brick wall. He had a scar slicing through his left eyebrow and eyes that looked like they had seen everything and found none of it impressive. Mr. Sterling, Sully said. His voice was gravel tumbling in a dryer. He didn't offer a hand. He knew better than to leave prints. Who is this, Jessica? I asked, keeping my voice low. The staff, Elena, if they see him. He came in through the service entrance as a pest control inspector, Jessica said, which is accurate, considering what we're dealing with. What do you have? I asked, lowering myself onto the sofa. The adrenaline was fading, leaving me tired, bone-tired. Sully didn't speak immediately. He reached into a battered satchel and pulled out a thick, terrifyingly heavy envelope. He tossed it onto the desk. It landed with a thud that echoed in the silent room. I found the leverage, Sully said. Your boy Marcus, or Ryan, or whatever he calls himself this week. He got sloppy in Miami. He got comfortable. He thought because he was aiming for a whale like you, the little fish wouldn't matter. He tapped the folder. He left a trail, credit card receipts, rental agreements, flight logs, but mostly he left people. Sully opened the folder. He laid out the documents, like a blackjack dealer revealing a bust. He has a wife, Sully said flatly. Her name is Veronica. She lives in a suburb of Columbus, Ohio. Not flashy. Nice lawn. Good schools. He dropped a photo on top of the pile. It showed Marcus pushing a swing set. He looked different, softer, less polished, wearing a polo shirt from a chain store. On the swings were 2 children, a boy and a girl. 2 kids, Sully continued. Ages 4 and 6. He sends them your money every month. Calls it consulting fees from his venture capital firm. To her, he's a high-flying businessman constantly traveling for work. He visits once a month. Bigamy. The word hung in the air. It wasn't just a moral failing, it was a felony. It was the nail in the coffin. He wasn't just stealing my money. He was stealing a life from that woman in Ohio. He was financing his lies with my sweat. Is she coming? I asked, staring at the photo of the children. Innocent collateral damage in a war they didn't know was happening. She's on a plane right now, Jessica said, her voice hard. Sully arranged it, told her Ryan had been in an accident and was asking for her. She thinks she's coming to a hospital. She has no idea she's coming to a wedding. She's the bomb, I whispered. But we need a detonator. We need to make sure they don't just go to jail. We need to make sure they leave with nothing. I looked at the phone on my desk. An archaic landline. I refused to replace. I need one more thing, I said. The financial trap. I picked up the receiver. The dial tone hummed, a sound of potential. Who are you calling? Jessica asked, concern flickering in her eyes. The lawyers? No, I said, my finger hovering over the keypad. Lawyers are for defense. I'm playing offense. I'm calling an old enemy. I dialed a number I hadn't called in 15 years. I knew it by heart. You memorize the numbers of the people who try to destroy you. The phone rang 4 times. Then a click. Vance Salvage and Demolition. A voice barked. It sounded like grinding gears. Arthur Vance, my business rival for 40 years. We had fought over zoning rights, steel contracts, and union deals since the 70s. He was a pirate in a suit, a man who would cut his own nose off to spite his face. Sterling? Vance's voice dropped an octave. I saw the obituary in the paper. Or was that just wishful thinking? Not yet, Arthur, I said, leaning back. I'm still kicking, though the sharks are circling. I heard, Vance chuckled. A hacking, smoker's cough. Heard you're marrying off that daughter to some Miami pretty boy, and that you're losing your marbles. The rumor's partially true, I said. I need a favor, Arthur. I don't do favors for you, Bob. I buried 3 of your projects in court last decade. Remember? I remember, I said. That's why I'm calling you. You're the only one vicious enough to help me. I want to buy Starling Logistics Detroit back from you. Silence on the line, then a snort of disbelief. That toxic dump? Vance asked. Bob, I bought that shell company from you in the hostile takeover of '98 just to annoy you. It's worthless. It's a rust bucket of a warehouse sitting on top of a soil contamination zone that glows in the dark. I know, I said calmly. It has $40 million in EPA fines attached to the deed. Payment is due tomorrow at midnight. Whoever holds the deed is personally liable. And you want to buy it back? Vance asked, suspicious. Why? You feeling nostalgic for lawsuits? I'm buying it for $1, I said, and then I'm giving it to my son-in-law as a wedding gift. A transfer of assets to the Starling Trust. The silence on the other end stretched for 10 seconds. Then Vance started to laugh. It started as a wheeze and grew into a roar. Along with the debt, I added. And the personal liability clause. You evil genius, Vance wheezed. You're going to saddle the kid with a $40 million anchor? I'm going to drown him with it, I clarified. I'm in, Vance said. I'll courier the deed over within the hour. For $1, I'd sell you my mother if it meant screwing over a con man. Good to have you back, Bob. The trap was set. The cheese was in the mousetrap. Now, we just had to wait for the rats. The rehearsal dinner. That night, the dining room was transformed. White lilies, Alina's favorite, and the flower of funerals were everywhere. The scent was cloying, suffocating. I sat at the head of the long mahogany table, 20 guests. The mayor, 2 senators, the elite of the Hamptons. They were all there to witness the merging of the Sterling fortune with whatever Marcus claimed to be. Elena sat on my right. She wore diamonds that I had bought for our 5th anniversary. They glittered like ice around her neck. The first course was served. Lobster bisque. I picked up my wine glass. My hand was steady for a split second, holding the heavy crystal. Then I looked at Marcus across the table. He was smiling at Jessica, a predator looking at a meal. I triggered the spasm. I jerked my wrist violently. The glass tipped. Red wine, a rich, dark Cabernet, splashed across the table, soaking the white linen and drenching the front of my white dress shirt. It looked like a gunshot wound spreading across my chest. Oh, Bob! Elena sighed loudly. It wasn't a sigh of concern. It was a sigh of performance. Look at you! She stood up, grabbing a napkin. She began to wipe my mouth and my shirt, scrubbing hard, treating me like a toddler who had missed his mouth. I'm sorry, I mumbled, letting my head hang low. The glass, it was slippery. He's deteriorating so fast. She whispered to the mayor's wife on her left, loud enough for half the table to hear. It's heartbreaking. Dr. Thorne says it's a rapid onset degenerative condition. Honestly, it will be a mercy if he goes soon. I saw the mayor's wife nod sympathetically. I saw the pity in their eyes. They weren't looking at Bob Sterling, the builder. They were looking at a corpse that hadn't stopped moving yet. Marcus leaned forward. It's okay, Bob. Don't worry about the shirt. We'll get you a bib next time, he chuckled, and a few guests nervously laughed with him. I looked up at him. I unfocused my eyes, staring just past his left ear. Thank you, David, I said. The table went quiet. It's Marcus, Bob, he said, his smile tightening. I'm Marcus, Jessica's fiancé. Right, I said, waving a hand, dismissively. David was the waiter, or was it the dog? I forget. I saw a vein throb in Marcus's temple. He hated being dismissed. He hated being irrelevant. "I'm not the waiter, Bob," he gritted out. "Enjoy the wine, boy. It's the last vintage you'll ever taste. Tomorrow, you drink the poison you brewed for me." The dinner ended in a blur of clinking glass and insincere toasts. I retreated to the master bedroom at 10 over p.m., pleading exhaustion. It wasn't a hard sell. The performance at dinner had drained me. I lay in the bed I used to share with Elena. The sheets were cool, high thread count cotton that felt like a shroud. I turned off the lamp, plunging the room into darkness, but I didn't sleep. I couldn't. My heart was drum beating against the mattress. I regulated my breathing. Inhale for 4.
Hold for 4. Exhale for 4.
An old trick from my days working on high steel girders in the wind. You can't shake when you're 40 stories up. Elena found the doorknob turned. It was a slow, deliberate sound. The latch clicked. I closed my eyes, letting my mouth hang open slightly, feigning the deep, heavy sleep of the medicated. 2 shadows entered the room. I could smell them before I heard them. Elena's perfume, Chanel, and cold ambition. Marcus's cologne, something musk-heavy and overpriced, trying too hard to smell masculine. They didn't whisper immediately. They just stood there at the foot of the bed, looking down at me. I could feel their gaze like a physical weight. It is a primal horror to be watched while you sleep. But it is a specific kind of hell to be watched by your executioners. "He's out," Marcus finally whispered. His voice was close. Too close. He was standing right beside my pillow. "He looks terrible," Elena replied. Her voice wasn't sad. It was critical, as if she were inspecting a piece of furniture that needed reupholstering. Gray. Wasted. "Tomorrow is the finale," Elena said, moving to the window to close the heavy drapes, ensuring no light would escape. "After the signing ceremony in the library, I'll bring him up here for a rest." "And then?" Marcus asked. "I'll bring him warm milk," Elena said. The banality of it made my blood run cold. Warm milk. The comfort of children. It's the perfect delivery system. The lactose masks the bitterness of the powder. With the special sauce. Marcus chuckled darkly. 3 fatal doses, Elena confirmed. Her tone was clinical, precise. "I crushed them myself an hour ago." He drinks it. Within 20 minutes, his heart rate slows to a stop. It will look like peaceful heart failure in his sleep. Dies on his daughter's wedding night, Marcus mused. That's tragic. The press will eat it up. Tragedy sells. Elena said, "Dr. Thorne is already prepped. He'll be here to sign the death certificate immediately." "Cause of death? Cardiac arrest? Due to pre-existing condition. No autopsy. No questions. Cremation scheduled for Tuesday." I lay perfectly still. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to open my eyes, to grab the lamp and smash it into Marcus's grinning face. But I forced my muscles to remain slack. I forced my breathing to remain shallow and rhythmic. My right hand was tucked under my pillow. My fingers were wrapped around a small, cold object. A high-fidelity digital recorder. I had pressed record the moment the doorknob turned. In the pitch black of the pillow's underside, a tiny red LED was blinking. Blink, blink. It was the only light in my universe. It was the heartbeat of my revenge. "I can't wait," Marcus whispered, his voice thick with greed. $100 million. "Do you know what I can do with my share?" "There's a yacht in Monaco, I'm denying." "Focus, you idiot." Elena snapped, her voice cutting like a whip. "The money means nothing if we botch the landing. We have to get the signature on the transfer documents first. If he dies before he signs, the trust goes to Jessica automatically. He has to be alive at 2 p.m. and dead by 4 p.m. "Relax, babe," Marcus said, the sound of fabric rustling, suggesting he was touching her. "We've got this. The old man is a vegetable. He's clueless." They turned to leave. "Good night, Bob," Elena whispered into the darkness. "Sweet dreams." The door clicked shut. I waited a full 5 minutes. I counted to 300 in the dark, listening for footsteps, for breathing, for any sign they were waiting outside the door. Silence. I sat up, gasping for air, as if I had been underwater. The room felt contaminated. I pulled the recorder out. My hands were shaking now, not from age, but from the sheer violence of what I had just heard. I pressed the play button, holding the device to my ear. I'll bring him warm milk. 3 fatal doses. No autopsy. The voice was clear, crisp. It was a confession. It was conspiracy to commit murder. It was perfect. Suddenly the door handle turned again. I froze. I shoved the recorder under the sheets. Had they heard me? Had they come back to finish the job early? I gripped the heavy brass lamp on the nightstand. If it was Marcus, he wasn't leaving this room walking. The door opened a crack. A sliver of hallway light spilled in. Mr. Bob. It wasn't Alina. It was a soft, accented voice. Maria. Our housekeeper of 15 years. The woman who had dusted my trophies and made soup for Jessica when she had the Lee. I relaxed, letting go of the lamp. Maria, I whispered. Come in. Quickly. She slipped inside and closed the door softly. She was holding a silver tray. I saw the lights go out, she whispered, approaching the bed. I brought you a sandwich, turkey and Swiss, and a bottle of water. She placed the tray on my lap. From my own fridge in the staff quarters, she added significantly. Sealed bottles. Safe. I looked at her. Her eyes were wide with fear, but her jaw was set. You know, I asked. I am not blind, Mr. Bob, she hissed, glancing at the door. I see her, in the kitchen, grinding the pills with the mortar and pestle. I see her putting powder in your orange juice. I tried to spill it yesterday. Remember? I remembered. Elena had yelled at her for 10 tenants. I thought you were just clumsy, I said, ashamed. Don't eat anything. She gives you tomorrow, Maria whispered, gripping my hand. Her palms were rough and warm. She is the devil. I took a bite of the sandwich. It tasted like life. Thank you, Maria, I said, feeling my strength returning. You don't have to worry tomorrow. This will all be over. What are you going to do? She asked. I'm going to take out the trash, I said. Maria listened to me closely. At approximately 2:30 p.m. tomorrow, police cars are going to come up the driveway. Lots of them. Her eyes widened. When they come, I said, open the main gates. Don't ask questions. Don't let security stop them. Just open the gates wide. She nodded slowly. A small, fierce smile touched her lips. I will open them, Mr. Bob. I will open them wide. She took the empty tray and slipped away into the night. The wedding morning arrived with a blinding, indifferent sun. The house was a hive of activity. Florists were hauling in thousands of white roses, so many that the air smelled thick and funeral sweet. A string quartet was tuning up in the garden. I stood in front of the mirror in my dressing room. I put on my tuxedo. It was a bespoke brownie tailored for me 5 years ago. Now, the waist was loose. The shoulders hung slightly. The stress and the poison had whittled me down. But as I buttoned the shirt, I didn't see a frail old man. I saw a structure that had been stripped back to the steel girders. The facade was gone. Only the load-bearing core remained. The door opened. Jessica walked in. She was breathtaking. Her dress was a masterpiece of lace and silk, costing more than my first house. But she didn't look like a blushing bride. She looked like a queen preparing for a coronation or an execution. Her face was pale, her makeup flawless but stark. There was no joy in her eyes, only a terrifying resolve. She looked at me in the mirror. She saw the looseness of my tux. She adjusted my bow tie, her fingers cool and steady. Ready, Dad? She asked. Ready, I said. Are you scared? I'm terrified, I admitted. Not of dying. I'm terrified I won't get to see their faces when the trap snaps shut. She smiled. It was a sharp, dangerous thing. Oh, you'll see them. I reserved the front row seat for you. We walked out of the house and onto the terrace. The garden was filled with 200 guests. The elite, the predators, they turned to watch us. Look at him, I heard a whisper. He looks like he's walking to his grave. Sad, he won't last the year. I leaned heavily on Jessica's arm, playing my role. I shuffled. I blinked confusedly at the sunlight. I let my mouth hang open, just a fraction. We reached the end of the aisle. The music swelled. Pachelbel's canon, a cliché for a fake wedding. At the altar stood Marcus. He looked perfect, tan, fit, wearing a tuxedo that fit him like a glove. He was smiling, a broad, winning smile that didn't reach his eyes. He looked at Jessica like she was a prize he had already won. He looked at me like I was an obstacle he had already cleared. Elena was in the front row, dabbing a dry eye with a handkerchief, playing the weeping mother. Dr. Thorne stood near the back, checking his watch. I reached the aider. I took Jessica's hand and placed it in Marcus's. His palm was clammy. The priest began to speak, but I didn't step back immediately. I leaned in close to Marcus, into his personal space. He smiled benevolently at me, expecting a senile blessing. "Enjoy it, son," I whispered. My voice wasn't slurred. It was low, clear, and hard as granite. "It's all downhill from here." He blinked. His smile faltered for a microsecond. He looked at me, confusion clouding his eyes. He thought I was rambling. He thought it was dementia talking. "Go sit down, Bob," he sneered under his breath, keeping his smile fixed for the cameras. "You're blocking the shot." I shuffled away to my seat next to Elena. "The shot? Oh, Marcus. I'm not blocking the shot. I am the gun." The reception was a blur of champagne flutes and hollow laughter. But the real event was scheduled for the intermission, the Grand Library, at 2:00 p.m., while the guests were distracted by the hors d'oeuvres. Elena steered me away from the crowd. Her grip on my elbow was tight, her fingernails digging into the tendon. "Time to sign the papers, darling," she whispered. "Then you can go rest." We entered the library. The heavy mahogany doors clicked shut, sealing out the noise of the party. The silence was instant and oppressive. The air here was cooler, smelling of old leather and imminent betrayal. Diane Ross, my corporate attorney for 30 years, stood behind my massive oak desk. She was a statue in a gray suit. Her face was impassive, betraying nothing, though I saw her knuckles were white as she gripped the edge of the desk. On the surface lay 3 stacks of documents, crisp and waiting. "The transfer of the Sterling Trust," Diane announced. Her voice was steady, professional, the voice of a woman reading a will. "This document irrevocably transfers control of the family assets, totaling $100 million in real estate and liquid holdings, to the joint stewardship of Jessica Sterling and her spouse." Elena and Marcus stood on the other side of the desk. I could hear their breathing shift. It became faster, shallower. They were salivating. They were 2 wolves staring at a wounded deer. "Sign here," Diane said, sliding the heavy document toward me. She pointed to the line with a gold Mont Blanc pen. I sat in the chair. I slumped forward, resting my forehead in my hand for a moment. I don't know," I mumbled, my voice trembling. "Maybe I should read it again." "Oh, for God's sake, Bob," Elena hissed. The mask slipped for a second. "You read it last week. You agreed to it. Don't be difficult now." I picked up the pen. I let my hand spasm. The pen clattered onto the desk, rolling toward the edge. "My hands," I whined. "They won't work." Elena grabbed the pen. She jammed it back into my hand, closing my fingers around it with bruising force. She leaned down, her perfume overpowering. "Sign the damn paper, Bob," she whispered in my ear, "or I'll have Dr. Thorne declare you incompetent right now and put you in a state facility." I looked up at her. I saw the abyss in her eyes. I lowered the pen to the paper. I scrawled a shaky, jagged signature. "Robert Sterling." It looked like the writing of a dying man. In a way it was. The Bob Sterling, who loved her, was dying in that chair. Diane pulled the papers away instantly. "Witnessed," she said. "Marcus next," Diane commanded. She slid a different stack of papers toward him. "Standard operating agreement," Diane said, flipping to the back page, "and the personal guarantees for the new acquisitions you requested." Marcus stepped forward. He didn't read a single word. He was too busy counting the zeros in his head. He picked up the pen with a flourish. "Marcus Stone," he signed, a fake name on a federal legal document. That was a felony right there. But the beauty of it was the personal guarantee page attached to the back. It didn't matter what name he signed. His biometric thumbprint was required on the electronic pad next to it for security. He pressed his thumb down, deep. He had just bound himself, personally and irrevocably, to the debt. Elena signed last. Her signature was sharp, aggressive. She dotted the I with a stab of the pen. "It is done," Diane said, gathering the folders. She placed them in her briefcase and locked it with a loud snap. The sound echoed in the room like a gunshot. The tension in the air broke. Elena stood up straighter. Her shoulders relaxed. She looked at me, and for the first time in months, her smile was genuine. It was a smile of pure triumph. She walked to the wet bar in the corner. She didn't ask if I wanted anything. She poured herself a distinct measure of scotch. My 30-year-old single malt, and downed it in one swallow. God, she exhaled, slamming the glass down. I am so sick of pretending to care about you, Bob. The silence that followed was heavy. Marcus laughed. It was an ugly sound. Elena turned around. Her eyes were cold, dead things. Do you have any idea how exhausting it is? She asked, walking toward me. Listening to your war stories about concrete, pretending you're not repulsive. She wrinkled her nose. You smell like old age and medicine. It clings to the sheets. Marcus walked over and put his arm around Jessica, pulling her close. Jessica stood stiff as a board. Don't worry, Elena, Marcus smirked. He won't be smelling up the place much longer. You served your purpose, old man, Marcus said, looking down at me with pure disdain. You built the fortune. You signed the papers. Now do us a favor and die. Seriously, hurry up. The milk is getting cold. From the corner of the room near the bookshelves, Dr. Thorne chuckled. I have the syringe ready, Elena. Whenever you want to accelerate the process. I sat there looking at them. The three of them. The unholy trinity of my destruction. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. The pressure was gone. The palpitations had stopped. The adrenaline of the hunt had cleared my arteries. I stopped shaking. I placed my hands flat on the desk. They were steady. Rock steady. I sat up straight. My spine cracked. Not from age, but from snapping back into alignment. I rolled my shoulders back. The slump of the invalid vanished. The confused, senile expression on my face dissolved into the hard, iron set of a man who had stared down mobsters in the 80s. I reached for the bottle of scotch on the desk. My hand moved with the precision of a piston. I poured a glass. I didn't spill a drop. You know, I said. My voice wasn't the weak, reedy whisper they had heard for months. It was a baritone rumble. It filled the room, bouncing off the oak paneling. It was the voice that had commanded 1,000 construction sites. The thing about acting, I said, standing up. I rose to my full height, 6'2". I loomed over the desk. Is knowing when the scene is over. The room froze. Elena's hand stopped halfway to her mouth. Her eyes widened, confused. She looked at me like a ghost had just walked out of the wall. What? She whispered. Bob? I repeated, locking eyes with her. The scene is over. I picked up a remote control from the desk. Turn on the TV, I commanded. The large 80-inch screen mounted on the far wall flickered to life. It was connected to the internal security server. The video from the pool house appeared. High-definition night vision. Marcus and Elena, naked, tangled on the sofa. Audio blared through the library's surround sound speakers. I gave him the special dose, double-strength sedatives. Once that brat Jessica signs, we get the money. What happens to Bob? Maybe he has a stroke. Elena dropped her glass. It hit the hardwood floor and shattered, shards of crystal scattering like ice. Marcus turned the color of ash. He stepped away from Jessica as if she were radioactive. What is this? He stammered. What is this? It's evidence, I said calmly. States Exhibit A. I pressed the button again. The image changed. The master bedroom. Night vision. The two shadows standing over my sleeping form. I'll bring him warm milk. 3 fatal doses. He drinks it. His heart stops. No autopsy. I can't wait to spend his money. The silence in the library was heavier than the steel beams I used to lift. It was the silence of a tomb. You recorded us? Elena shrieked. Her voice cracked, hysterical. You senile old bat, you recorded us? I recorded everything, I said. Every conversation, every plot. Every time you laughed at me. I walked around the desk. I didn't need a cane. I moved toward them, and they shrank back. But that's not the best part, I said softly. I looked at Diane. Tell them, Diane. Diane stepped forward. She opened the folder they had just signed. Congratulations, she said, her voice dripping with professional sarcasm. You just signed the transfer documents, but you didn't read Schedule A. Schedule A? Marcus stammered, sweat breaking out on his forehead. What's Schedule? It's the list of assets being transferred to your name, Diane explained. You are now the sole owners of a holding company called Sterling Logistics Detroit, Diane announced. What is that? Elena demanded, her eyes darting between me and the papers. Is it the warehouse district? Is it valuable? It is a shell company, I said, a smile slowly spreading across my face. A shark's smile. It holds the deed to a single property, a decommissioned industrial salvage yard in Queens. It's a Superfund site, I explained, enjoying every syllable. The soil is contaminated with lead, mercury, and asbestos. The EPA slapped it with a remediation order 10 years ago. I leaned in close to Marcus. It has $40 million in federal fines attached to it. Payment is due tomorrow, and thanks to the personal guarantee you just signed. I pointed to Marcus's trembling hand. That debt isn't corporate, it's yours. Personally. You bankrupt us? Marcus whispered. The arrogance was gone. He looked like a child who had lost his mother. I didn't just bankrupt you, I said, my voice dropping to a growl. I buried you. I put you in a hole so deep you will never see the sun again. This is illegal, Elena screamed. She looked wild, unhinged. She lunged at me, her hands curled into claws. You can't do this. I'll sue you. I'll kill you. I didn't flinch. I didn't move, because I saw the curtain behind her move. Sully stepped out from behind the heavy velvet drapes. He looked bored. He stepped in front of Elena like a wall of concrete. It's perfectly legal, Sully rumbled. You signed it, witnessed by a lawyer, captured on video. Elena bounced off him and stumbled back. And the police are here, I added, glancing at the door. Not for the debt, that's civil. They're here for the attempted murder charge. Conspiracy to commit homicide. Elder abuse. Fraud. The double doors of the library burst open. They didn't just open. They were kicked in. Uniformed officers swarmed into the room, their radios crackling. The illusion of the high society wedding shattered instantly. Police. Everyone, stay there. You are. Hands, where I can see them. And there is one more surprise. Jessica said. Her voice was ice cold. She walked to the side door, the servants' entrance. She opened it. A woman walked in. She looked tired, wearing jeans and a travel-stained cardigan. She was holding the hands of two small, confused children. Veronica. Ryan? Veronica whispered. Her voice was small, broken. Marcus. Ryan froze. He looked at the police, then at me, then at the woman. His knees actually buckled. He grabbed the edge of the desk to stay upright. Veronica, he choked out. What are you doing here? You said you were in Ohio, she cried, tears streaming down her face. You said you were in the hospital. Bigamy, Diane noted, ticking it off on her fingers. Another felony, and fraud across state lines. Elena looked at Marcus. The realization washed over her. She wasn't the mastermind. She was just another mark. You're married? She screeched. She looked at the children. You have kids? You told me you were single. You lied to me? She slapped him. It was a vicious, open-handed crack that echoed through the room. You lied to me? The irony was so thick I could taste it. The room was a cacophony of shouting voices and static from police radios, but my eyes were locked on Marcus. I watched the realization shatter his composure. The facade of the confident venture capitalist dissolved, leaving behind a terrified, cornered grifter. He looked at Veronica, who was weeping silently, clutching her children. He looked at Elena, whose face was twisted in a mask of betrayal and fury. He looked at the police officers, advancing with zip ties. I'm not going to jail, he screamed. It was a high, thin sound, devoid of dignity. I'm not going down for this, he bolted. He didn't run like a man, he scrambled like a rodent. He knocked over a tray of champagne glasses, sending crystal shattering across the floor, and sprinted toward the open terrace doors. He thought he could make it to the lawn, maybe the beach, maybe disappear into the dunes. He threw the terrace doors open, gasping for air, ready to leap into the freedom of the garden. But the exit wasn't clear. Standing in the doorway, framed by the afternoon sun like a gargoyle, was Arthur Vance. Vance was wearing a suit that looked 30 years old, straining at the shoulders. He held a lit cigar in one hand. He didn't look like a wedding guest. He looked like a brick wall that had decided to wear a tie. "Going somewhere, pretty boy?" Vance grunted. His voice was gravel and smoke. Marcus tried to dodge him. "Move! Get out of my way, old man." Vance didn't move. He simply stepped forward and shoved Marcus. It wasn't a fight. It was physics. Mass times acceleration. Marcus flew backward, his feet leaving the ground, and crashed back into the library, sliding across the polished floor until he hit the leg of the sofa. 2 officers were on him instantly. They hauled him up by his armpits. Marcus was crying now, ugly, heaving sobs. Snot ran down his nose, mixing with the fake tan. "She made me do it," he screamed, pointing a shaking finger at Elena. "It was her idea. I just wanted the money. She planned the murder. I didn't want to kill him. She made me, coward, to the very end. No honor among thieves, and certainly no loyalty among murderers." I watched Veronica turn her children's faces away so they wouldn't see their father begging. That was the only tragedy here. Elena didn't run. She stood tall, smoothing the front of her designer dress. She tried to summon the imperious air of the mistress of the house, but her hands were trembling violently. An officer approached her. "Elena Sterling, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and attempted poisoning." She held out her wrists for the cuffs. Lifting her chin, she refused to look at the police. She looked only at me. Her eyes were filled with a hatred so pure it felt like radiant heat. "You old fool," she hissed as the metal clicked shut around her wrists. "You think you've won? You're dying. You'll be dead in a month, and you'll die alone." I walked up to her. I stood close enough to smell the fear beneath the perfume. "Maybe," I said softly. "I am old, and my heart is tired. But I won't die today, Lena. And I won't die married to you." I raised my left hand. Slowly, deliberately, I slid the gold wedding band off my finger. It left a pale indentation on my skin, a scar of 10 years of deception. I held it up. It caught the light. "I took this off a corpse," I said. "Our marriage was dead years ago. I just didn't sign the death certificate until today." I dropped the ring. It didn't land in her hand. I dropped it into the pocket of her dress. "Keep it," I said. "You'll need it for bail, though I doubt it will cover the lawyer fees you're going to need." They dragged them away. Marcus was still screaming about a plea deal. Elena walked out in stony silence, head high, marching toward her cage. Dr. Thorne tried to blend into the wallpaper, inching toward the side exit. "Don't forget your bag, Doc," Sully called out, his voice lazy, but dangerous. Thorne froze. Sully picked up the medical bag. "It's full of evidence," Sully told the nearest officer. "Syringes, the mixing compounds. And I bet, if you check his pockets, you'll find a nice fat check signed by Mrs. Sterling." The police grabbed Thorne. He didn't fight. He just slumped, a man whose greed had finally outpaced his intelligence. The library cleared out. The police took the statements, gathered the recordings, and secured the scene. The noise faded, replaced by the heavy, ringing silence that follows an explosion. It was just us now, the survivors, me, Jessica, Diane, Sully, Vance, and Veronica, sitting on the sofa, weeping softly while Maria brought her tea. I looked around the room. The floor was stained with wine and broken glass. The air still smelled of the chaos. But the snakes were gone. The house felt lighter. The shadows seemed to retreat. I sank into the leather sofa, the one opposite where Marcus had been sitting. The adrenaline that had sustained me for the last 24 hours drained away like water from a broken dam. My hands started to shake again, not from acting, but from the sheer physical toll. "We did it," Jessica whispered. She stood by the fireplace. She reached up and ripped the expensive lace veil from her hair. It made a tearing sound. She threw it onto the floor. "We sure did, kid," I said, my voice raspy. Vance walked over to the bar. He poured a tumbler of whiskey, neat, no ice, and handed it to me. "You're a crazy son of a gun, Sterling," Vance said, shaking his head. "Giving them the Detroit company? Cold, ice cold. I almost felt sorry for them, almost. It was business, Arthur, I said, taking the drink. The whiskey burned, a welcome sensation. Just a transaction. Liability for liability. Jessica picked up the torn veil from the floor. She looked at it for a moment, a symbol of a wedding that was never meant to be, a love that was a lie. She turned to the fireplace, where a decorative fire was crackling. She threw the veil into the flames. We watched it catch. The lace curled, blackened, and vanished in a puff of gray smoke. "Good riddance," she whispered. "So," Sully said, packing up his surveillance gear. "What now, Mr. Sterling?" I looked at the empty library. I looked at the garden beyond the windows, where the confused guests were being dispersed by security. "Now," I said, setting the glass down, "we clean up the mess. We rebuild." "That's what we do." I looked at Veronica. "Diane," I said, "make sure she and the children are taken care of. Hotel, flight home and set up a trust for the kids. Education fund. It's not their fault their father is a monster." Diane nodded. "Consider it done, Bob." I turned to Jessica. She was staring into the fire, her face glowing in the orange light. She looked strong, harder than before, but unbreakable. "You run the company, Jess," I said. She froze. She turned to look at me, eyes wide. "What? I'm retiring," I said. The words felt strange in my mouth, but right. "I'm done. I'm 72 years old. I just survived an assassination attempt by my wife. I think I've earned a day off. But the board," she stammered. "The board answers to the trust," I said. "And as of today, you control the trust. I'm stepping down as CEO effective tomorrow morning." "You trust me?" she asked. Her voice was small, vulnerable for the first time all day. "After I let him into our lives." "You didn't just let him in," I said. "You found him out. You hired Sully. You switched the pills. You saved the family fortune. And you saved my life." I smiled at her. "You outsmarted a conman and a black widow. You have the killer instinct, Jessica. You're a Sterling. You're more qualified than I ever was." She gentle, a real smile, one that reached her eyes and chased away the shadows. Tears streamed down her face, but they were tears of relief. "Maria," I called out. Maria poked her head in from the hallway, her eyes red from crying. "Yes, Mr. Bob." "Throw out all the food," I said. "All that fancy French foam in tiny portions. Get rid of it." "And," she asked, "and go to the butcher. Buy me a steak. A ribeye, bone in, and cook it rare. I'm starving." I walked out to the terrace, leaving the others to the logistics of the cleanup. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in bruised purples and blood reds. The air smelled of salt and cooling earth. I took a deep breath. It filled my lungs, expanding my chest without pain. I felt a twinge of sadness, not for Elena, but for the wasted time. For the years I spent building towers of steel, while the foundation of my home rotted. But that was the past. And I was still standing. Jessica joined me at the railing. She had taken off the heels and was barefoot on the stone, just like I had been the night I found them. "Are you okay, Dad?" she asked, leaning her head on my shoulder. "I'm better than okay," I said. "I'm alive. No more weddings for a while," she joked weakly. "Good," I grunted. "I can't afford it, and I'm running out of toxic waste sites to give away as dowries." We stood there in silence, watching the first stars puncture the twilight. The nightmare was over. The house was quiet. "Dad? Yeah? Did you really buy that toxic waste site in Detroit by mistake?" she asked, looking up at me. I laughed, a deep, belly laugh that shook my frame. "No," I admitted. "Arthur Vance bet me $1,000 in 1998 that I wouldn't buy the ugliest property in the state. I bought it to win the bet. I spent 20 years trying to offload that rust bucket." I chuckled. I cursed the day I bought it. But today, I looked at the driveway where the police cars had disappeared. Best bad investment I ever made. It paid for itself 10 times over. We laughed together. It was a healing sound. It drowned out the memory of the cruel laughter from the pool house. I looked at my hands resting on the stone balustrade. They weren't shaking. The poison was leaving my system. The weakness was fading. I was 72, I had lost a wife. I had lost the illusion of a happy golden age. But I still had the steel. I still had the structure. Let's go inside, Jessica said, shivering slightly in the evening breeze. Maria has the stakes on. You go, I said gently. I'll be in a minute. I want to watch the stars for a bit. She kissed my cheek. I love you, Dad. I love you too, kid. Now go run my empire. She smiled and walked back into the warmth of the house. I was alone, but for the first time in years I wasn't lonely. I reached into my tuxedo pocket and pulled out the small digital recorder, the little black box that had saved my life. I stared at it. It held the voices of my enemies. It held the sound of their hate. I could keep it. I could listen to it to remind myself of the victory. But I didn't need to. I knew who I was. I pressed the delete button. Are you sure? The tiny screen flashed. I pressed yes. Erasing, case closed, I whispered to the night. I tossed the recorder into the dense rhododendron bushes below the terrace. It disappeared into the leaves. I turned back to the house. Through the glass doors, I could see the warm yellow light of the kitchen. I could see Maria laughing at something Vance said. I could see Jessica pouring wine for Sully. This was my life. Imperfect. Scarred. Rebuilt from the rubble. But it was mine, and I had taken it back. They tried to bury me. They looked at my gray hair and my slow walk, and they thought I was finished. They thought I was dirt. They forgot that when you bury a thing in the dirt, if it has a strong enough core, it grows. They forgot I was a seed. I opened the door and stepped inside, ready for my stake. True strength isn't just about never cracking. It's about how you rebuild when the world tries to tear you down. If this story of justice, iron will, and redemption resonated with you, honor that with a like. Subscribe now to ensure you don't miss the next journey into the depths of the human experience, because the strongest foundations are the ones we build together.